All right. Well, hello everyone and welcome. We're so excited to have you today for our webinar on Azure AI Foundry, session one of a two-part series that we're excited about. My name is Danielle Kelly. I'll be co-leading today's session alongside my colleague Pierre, who is a seasoned expert in the data and AI space. So before we dive in, I'd like to quickly walk you through our session objectives. Today is really all about introducing Azure AI Foundry, helping you understand where it fits in the broader Microsoft AI ecosystem, and showing you how various organizations are using it to build scalable, secure, and customizable AI solutions. All right. Before we dive in, let's take a look at our outline, what you can expect today. Um, quick housekeeping note, today's session is being recorded, so we'll be sharing those slides afterwards, so you can revisit the content or share it with your teams. Keep an eye out on the chat. I'll post a poll so you can sign up to be put on our list for that content. All right, whoops, went one too far. All right, so what to expect today? We'll do some brief introductions. We will talk a little bit about the state of AI today, where we're at, and kind of where we're headed. And then Pierre will dive into our Foundry basics, our Foundry 101, if you will. He will walk through some of the platform features, and then we'll talk about some different business scenarios and use cases to kind of inspire you all on what's possible. Um, and then we will talk about next steps and talk about different options we have there. And then please hold your questions until the end because we will have an interactive Q&A session to close us out. So our goal for you today is that you leave with a clear understanding of what Azure AI Foundry is and how it compares to other tools like Copilot Studio. We'll introduce you to some key concepts and terminology so that we can help level set your understanding. And then, as I said, we'll talk about some real world business scenarios and use cases. So our goal is that you all will understand what it takes to get started if you haven't already started and where you need to go next. Some brief introductions here. Covenant Technology Partners was founded in St. Louis in 2004. We are a Microsoft-focused consulting firm. We specialize in strategic AI implementations, cloud transformation, and data analytics, for example. And we really help organizations implement AI strategically across various business functions for measurable impact. A little bit about me. I'm a strategic AI implementation consultant at Covenant, again, where we specialize in the Microsoft technologies, Microsoft Stack, and AI solutions. So my focus is to help organizations analyze business processes and identify the strategy for integrating AI across their operations. So including developing a roadmap, a strategic roadmap that drives ROI, user enablement, and adoption. So at Covenant, we really work closely with our clients to ensure that their AI journey is not just technically sound, but also aligned with their business processes and business goals. So whether that's Copilot, Foundry, custom AI models, whatever it is, we help organizations make informed decisions about these tools and the platforms that will deliver the most value. I'd now like to introduce my colleague Pierre, who will be guiding us through the technical foundations of Azure AI Foundry, including when to consider Foundry, different features, et cetera, as I mentioned in the beginning.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pierre Laframbois, and as Danielle indicated, I lead our data and AI solution group at Covenant. So my team and I are responsible for building out kind of the foundational elements of AI through data platform analytics, as well as building AI applications on top of that, custom applications using things like Microsoft's Azure AI Foundry, which we'll be covering today. It's good to meet everyone.
All right. So before we jump into Foundry, let's take a moment here to look at the state of AI. And Microsoft's AI strategy is evolving rapidly, as we know, and it's important to understand how the tools like Copilot and Foundry fit into that roadmap and our journeys. So how I like to think of it is Copilot as your productivity layer that helps bring AI into your everyday tools that you're used to using, your Word, Excel, Teams, etc. With Foundry, on the other hand, being more that customization and control layer. So that Foundry is really where it opens up the possibilities to the ability to build and manage and deploy your own models with that enterprise-grade governance and flexibility. So as we know, things are moving incredibly fast. We've seen this platform shift of, from that single model to multi-model, um, building out simple POCs to now those more automated workflows. So clearly, we've entered into a world of agentic AI where everyone from business decision makers to developers are really rethinking how they can drive that business value with AI. So you can see a few numbers here. So according to Gartner projections, there'll be about 1.3 billion AI agents by 2028. Um, 90%, it's estimated that 90% of enterprise software engineers will be utilizing AI code assistance by 2028 as well. I imagine that that is already pretty close to that now. So I see that number being a lot higher. But clearly, establishing that firm foundation to set yourself up for success as things are rapidly evolving is critical in today's landscape. All right, so some trends we've seen. A couple of these really stick out to me. 93% of organizations are experimenting with multiple models. That's probably not surprising to anyone. However, it looks like only about a third of those organizations are actually those solutions are actually making it into production. And so when I saw that, that's a little jarring. Pierre and I were discussing some of that this morning about why that might be. Of course, there are many different reasons that could be, right? Dev challenges, expectations maybe not lining up, uh, user adoption and enablement, right? For example. Um, and so today, really what we want to do is really outline what you need to know to set yourself up so you do not fall into that one third where your investment is not making it into production. So um, Pierre actually has an example. We were talking earlier that I'd like him to share about the importance of establishing that foundation.
I would just add here that based on there are a lot of reasons why these AI initiatives, these POCs, pilots, don't necessarily make it into production. But I would say, based on my experience, the number one thing that drives this is either lack of data or poor data quality. And a couple examples that I can give, they're really actually the same example, just across multiple organizations, is I was working with an oil company that is trying to manage remote oil wells. And many of these wells are hours away from the nearest technician. And so when something goes down, and a pump fails or something along those lines, it takes them maybe 6, 8 hours plus to dispatch a person to get there. And all of that time is lost revenue because the oil well is no longer pumping. And so they wanted to do an AI initiative that was monitoring these wells based on all of the telemetry data they're collecting and try to predict the failure or the imminent failure so they could be proactive about dispatching an engineer to go fix these problems before they actually became problems. And we very, very quickly learned after going through all of the telemetry data that the quality of this data was too poor to actually make any sort of real predictions on. It was very noisy. They also didn't properly capture when this data was leading to a failure event. So it was very difficult for the AI or people for that matter to be able to identify what it was as kind of a root cause that was leading to this. And so despite having literal terabytes of data for this, they were unable to make any real headway and improve it, and they had to change some of their processes before they were ready to implement AI. On kind of a similar note, is working with an aviation and engine manufacturer, and they were trying to utilize the data they were collecting from these engines to help predict when failures were happening. Their problem was a little different. Their problem was more along the lines of the failures were actually quite rare for them, and they didn't have enough failure data to be able to predict when these things were happening. And so we had to take kind of a different approach with them as well and actually simulate some of these failures so that they could collect the telemetry around it so that the AI could help predict this and look for issues in their engines. But both of these examples, again, the initial project led to a failure and not moving forward into production due to either missing data or data quality issues. So that tends to be the largest blocker for any of these projects. The AI software, the AI development layers are actually pretty mature at this point, even though they're relatively new, but they are still wholly dependent upon having good quality data to drive them.
All right, let's dive in.
Yep, absolutely. Let's get into kind of what Foundry is. Hit the next slide, please. So AI Foundry is really meant to be a unifying platform for building AI. And there's a lot of organizations going after this. AWS on the Amazon side is going after this. Google is really building their platform up as well. What Microsoft is trying to do here is create this umbrella of different features that back these various AI models and simplify the process of building applications and agents within the Azure environment. And so when we look at what is Foundry, Foundry is really that platform that Microsoft is building to unify all of these things. And it isn't just about the development side of it, it's about all of the other features and functionality that they're layering on to this. So that is things like the safety and evaluation tools, the ability to have the agent runtimes live under this same umbrella. All of that is what leads to what AI Foundry is. So we end up from a architectural diagram perspective of this being AI Foundry. We have kind of at the core of it, at the top here, we have a model catalog that allows us to browse through literally thousands of models at this point. And these are everything from proprietary models, industry-driven models, open source models, plus all of the kind of the common models that are popular today, like OpenAI's models, or even things like Grok or so forth. So it is a open model catalog that you can select from. And we'll take a look at this when we do kind of the tour of the environment. But that is the first kind of foundational layer to Foundry, is bringing all of these models to a single location where you can manage them. You also have the ability to bring your own models, which we'll talk about here in a moment. That then is sandwiched on top of a number of services, and this is not a comprehensive list by any means. This is focused mostly on the Azure services, but there are third-party services that we'll look at as well that are kind of sandwiched in here to take these models and help you build out actual agentic services that can react to things. So something like the Azure AI search allows you to take one of the models and ground it with your data so that the models can be used to build agents that search over content that you own and be able to answer questions or take actions upon data that you own. And that's kind of what this tooling layer is all about. It's connecting the models very easily to a series of tools that allow you to enhance them and make the capability much more functional. Then below that, we end up with these layers that are really around the management and customization of it. We have things like evaluations, and we'll go into what these different terms mean, and governance and monitoring and so forth that is built on top of this. So it has a universal layer for being able to manage these things. And this is where you'll see the differentiation of this start to occur. because this is areas that maybe other platforms are not nearly as mature in. And this sort of additional tooling to provide governance and monitoring and so forth is an area that AI Foundry is pretty strong. And all of this is then also built on top of this universal kind of observability layer. It is built based on open telemetry, and it integrates into other Azure features like Azure Monitor and Application Insights that help you kind of monitor these applications and agents that are being built. And then to the left here, this is also important, is there is two-way integration with a lot of different tooling. Again, this is mostly focused on Microsoft stack here, but this tooling is generic in many ways. There are open SDKs for AI Foundry that allow you to code in alternative environments and so forth, but it's a first class integration with things like Copilot Studio, Visual Studio Code, GitHub, and then, of course, like I said, at the bottom here, we have an open SDK that can be used to integrate this into essentially any sort of application layer that you're looking for. So from a foundational perspective, AI Foundry is built on these four different pillars, and we'll go into some of the content here. But the first is around being able to innovate. And the main way that this is tackled is through availability of models. So Microsoft has partnerships with a lot of different AI organizations that are deploying their models. And you have things like OpenAI's GPT models that are available same day within Azure. So the moment that it's being released on for like ChatGPT, it's also being enabled inside of AI Foundry for you to use. And there's a bunch of innovations that are built around this as well. From a differentiator pillar, this is the tooling that Microsoft is building on top of this. This is everything from those AI services that we were just looking at a moment ago to the ability to tie into data wherever it lives with something like Microsoft Fabric. Then we have a series of safeguards, and we'll go into this in a moment of what this is, but it allows you to have content safety. So this is both ways. So this is content safety on the prompts that are going into the AI models, as well as AI safety around the content that is being pushed out of the models, the responses. And then finally, there's a management layer for this as well that allows you to manage what users have access, all the monitoring and tracing, and so on and so forth. And then on top of all of this, it's built on top of Azure's infrastructure. So AI Foundry will do things like deploy new resource groups and resources within it, all transparently within the Azure infrastructure. So it is hosted in Azure, but a lot of that is abstracted out for your AI engineers from the Foundry perspective. They just create a new project and it will automatically provision what is needed in the back end for that project. So one of the, again, strong areas of Foundry is the model catalog, and we'll take a look at this during the demo, but this is a little old, it says there's 1,800 models plus, there's quite a few more than that. And when we talk about models here, we're talking about a few things. There's, of course, the well-known large language models like the OpenAI family of models or some of the open source ones like Llama and so forth. But there's a lot of proprietary models that are in this as well. You can see Databricks' model family, Snowflake's, so on. So there's access to these partner models. Then you have a series of customized models that are geared towards specific industries like Rockwell Automation for some of the uh, manufacturing side. Bayer has some models in here for doing more of the pharmaceutical side. There's a whole series of these models that are broken down. And one of the features of the model catalog here isn't just bringing all of these models together for flexibility, but these are also curated so you can explore them, you can look at what their strengths are, you can compare them to other models, and there's also tooling available to help you select what is the best model for your scenario that you're trying to achieve. Then in kind of the differentiator category here, there is a whole bunch of services built around building enterprise grade agent services. So there, and we'll again go into some of the details of this on our tour, but there's ways of then tying these agents in very easily into knowledge sources. So if you need your agent, for instance, to be able to search the web, you can tie it directly into Bing search very easily. You need it to be able to access your data lake. You can do that by bridging it into something like Fabric and so on. And then there's connectors for it to perform certain actions. And you can get very detailed on those actions. You can connect it to, for instance, an Azure function app, and that function app can alert, send emails, it can take actions on your behalf, and so on. So all of this is built into the platform to help facilitate rapid development and then perhaps even automation of these agents. So from a capabilities perspective, this is where this continues to advance. So if you looked at this a year ago, most of it would have been focused purely on kind of the chatbot experience of being able to chat with some of these models and maybe providing custom instruction sets or grounding it with your data, but that has since evolved into more of this agentic model. And you have more flat kind of models where you have a single agent. So, like in this example, it is an AI agent for HR that helps order laptops for new employees. Or it could be something much more complicated where we have a chain of agents built together, where we have some for IT, for training, for HR. So, as you're onboarding a new employee, as an example, it is going through a chain of events to onboard that person. It's setting everything up in HR, it's requesting user information, laptops, other equipment that they might need, and it's also then initiating any of the kind of initial training that you need. This ability to do this in a multi-model environment and a multi-agent environment is really what starts to make this platform very powerful and what starts to differentiate it from other platforms. Now, these are things that you could manually build yourself, but it's all of the kind of the helper connectors that go on between these agents to do agent to agent communication or to do lookups with services through like an MCP that really start to accelerate the development process here. There isn't necessarily, again, anything that is part of Foundry that you couldn't self-build, but this service is meant to be the platform to help accelerate this stuff and manage it in a very consumable and repeatable way. So from an agent perspective, again, there is a bit of a spectrum here as to what you can build. On the very simple side is these retrieval type agents. Again, this is more of a simple chat bot. You are just asking questions of it and you're using whatever knowledge base is provided to the agent so that you can get good quality answers back. And then the next evolution of that is to be able to have the retrieval, plus you want it to be able to do tasks. Maybe an example of that is I am working with some sort of marketing agent and I want to generate an email for a client or a prospect that I have. The retrieval agent is going to be very good at potentially writing that email. But now, if you actually want it to do something like send that email to do the task, that's where you kind of move into that next kind of level of this, but it still is largely human driven. You have to give it uh, instructions on what you want it to do and how you want it to do it. But at that point, it is connected to other services and actions that allow it to do things on your behalf. But finally, from a more advanced perspective, is fully autonomous agents, where it is automatically generating these things as new leads come in. It may then automatically create that email. It may send it out for a human approval. And then upon approval, it may then actually implement the email actions to send out the marketing notifications in a fully kind of autonomous way. So there's an entire spectrum of these type of agents that you can build depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish in the environment. And all of this, again, is enabled by Foundry's features. So these agents, though, are only as good as kind of the safety systems that are built in. We are seeing every day new kind of vectors for being able to attack or sometimes called jailbreak these various agents, especially for the public facing ones like a ChatGPT and so forth, where people are prompting it in a way that allows it to kind of get around some of the safety features that are built in. One of the core pillars here inside of Foundry is to provide this safety in a built-in way. So I already mentioned earlier that it can do that from a prompt engineering perspective, where it is specifically looking for prompts that are coming in that are trying to do things that are inappropriate with your data and vice versa on the responses back. That can be everything from like hate speech to violence to you name it, there's ways of providing safeguards in here. But that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. You can also use things like Microsoft Purview to make sure that your data that is confidential is not leaking out of this, and you can keep track of what is going out. You can monitor these prompts, you can monitor the responses, and you can build out evaluation models here that allow you to actually see how this changes over time and monitor these systems. It's a pretty comprehensive content safety system that's built into Foundry. So with this, it is meant to enable a lot of different roles within an organization and roles around AI Foundry. So you're enabling IT administrators to be able to manage these resources and secure them. You're enabling your AI engineers to design and integrate this with AI apps in a safe manner. Your AI developers can scale and code and refine. And then finally, your risk managers also have the ability to assess the risk and compliance of these apps through those evaluations and other kind of safeguards that are put in place. Again, this is one of the differentiators from a Foundry perspective of what it is providing. It is meant to be this kind of holistic approach that is providing the correct content and data to all of these different roles so that they can manage these environments and get their job done quickly and effectively. So on top of this, there's a lot of productivity enhancements that are built into Foundry as well. These are just some examples around some of the observability tools, but also the management that allows you to manage this via projects or manage it via private endpoints. You can set up quotas for these models so that you can control spend. You can manage how many users are able to access this. Plus, there's all of the reporting and automation and stuff around it. Again, this is built to be an entire lifecycle management system for your AI projects. So from that perspective, AI Foundry has already been wildly successful. There are currently processing over 100 trillion tokens every quarter. There are somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple billion requests that are going out monthly that are part of this from an API perspective. It is already turned into a very massive product suite for Microsoft. It's all built on top of the Azure infrastructure where there's 13 million apps that are tied into this today. And there's over 150 million developer accounts in GitHub that can take advantage of these features and stuff today as well. I do want to spend a little bit of time, though, contrasting this to Microsoft's other AI studio, and that's Copilot Studio, because it's one of the questions we get very frequently is, why would I use Foundry? I already have Copilot Studio, or vice versa. Why might I want to use Copilot Studio? So first and foremost, these are targeting very, very different audiences. AI Foundry is definitely code first, and it is focused on developers and platform teams. The type of resources that are going to build something out in AI Foundry is absolutely not going to be business users, power users, or when we say app owners, we're talking about like kind of the power platform app side of things, business applications or line of business applications. And so there's a clear line in the sand here between this code first, SDK driven experience and kind of the low code visual designer side that is with Copilot Studio. Under the hood, though, there's also some pretty substantial differences. You have full control over what models you're using. And as I mentioned, you can also bring your own models via managed compute. So you can deploy models that either it's something that you have built and managed if you're advanced in that kind of scenario, or you're bringing in other open source kind of models or purchased models that you may have access to. The level of customizable features on AI Foundry side is huge compared to Copilot Studio. From that perspective, you really have no control over the models that are being used. The models are managed by the service. They're managed by Microsoft. It may be some of the same models that are available in AI Foundry, but all of that is abstracted out for you, and you don't really see it. And it really is focused on extensibility for the M365 platform, as opposed to building out truly custom differentiating type of AI agents that you might have elsewhere in your business. It's true also of the runtime. All of the runtime on Copilot, again, lives inside of that Copilot environment, inside of M365, and maybe some of the channels there with like Teams and so forth, where the runtime on the other side with agentic services, it is living in Azure. You manage all of this, where threads, the tool orchestration, the safety and networking is all built on top of the platform to help you with that. Similar story with grounding. You have a lot more flexibility on the grounding side when you're bringing in your own data compared to Copilot Studio, which is really limited to the data connectors that are available and things that are visible through the M365 graph. So that's things like SharePoint, things like other Power Platform apps and Dataverse and things like that. Where again, on the other side, the sky's kind of the limit. You have the ability to write your own connectors. You have the ability to bring in your own data in a lot of different ways. And there's also third-party tooling that we'll look at briefly when we do our tour that can help enhance all of that as well. And then kind of the big final comparison here is around the networking and security side. Everything on the Copilot side, again, is built around the kind of the Power Platform environments. You do have DLP policies to help with some of the securing of it, but the publishing and stuff is within that kind of walled garden of M365. On the other hand, with Azure side of this, we can use private endpoints, VNets. We have all of RBAC type of role-based security for this, and you can set up quotas and so forth at kind of that resource level. So there's a fairly substantial difference there as well. So it is really important to understand that AI Foundry is what all of these solutions from Microsoft is running on. So when we talk about Copilot or M365 Copilot, under the hood, that is built on top of Microsoft's Azure AI Foundry. So really, it isn't so much about contrasting these things as it is they're better together in a lot of ways. Copilot Studio can consume uh, information, models, and so forth that are deployed in AI Foundry. And AI Foundry is also then dependent upon kind of your data stack here. That is how we're going to integrate all the grounding information in here. That could be something like, again, Fabric, but it could also just be the Azure AI search on top of files in Blob Store or something along those lines. So when we're looking at this, it's really meant to be kind of Copilot and the AI stack building this as a unified solution. Copilot Studio gives you a very easy way of now integrating this into your business apps and where your business users live. That may not be your only route. You may also want to do more of a custom solution. Say it's built into your website or something like that, using Visual Studio and having some level of an API endpoint for the Azure AI Foundry. But it's not an either or. It's not an either or at all. It's really going to be a mix of these solutions based on what you're trying to accomplish. And I think the next, yeah, we'll move into the tour here. So, all right. So what I'm going to do here quickly is I am inside of Azure AI Foundry in the browser, and I'm going to give a bit of a tour as to where some of these features and functionality live. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how we can utilize some of the tooling. I do want to be very clear, though, that this is meant to just be a tour of this platform. Our follow-on session that was kind of alluded to earlier, part two of this webinar series, will go into some of the details of how to actually configure some of these features and so forth. This is just that kind of a high-level one-on-one tour of this. So as you log into AI Foundry, this is the base kind of overview page, the base dashboard. And this may look a little bit different for everyone because it's going to be based on what you've been doing inside of this platform. But it's mostly the same in that this top portion is going to be focused on solutions that you've already been working on. And we'll dive into this in a little bit because I do want to get into a project and kind of show some of the features there. But for now, just understand these are all of the AI resources that you have access to inside of your Azure tenant so that it gives you kind of a centralized place to manage this. This is a demo environment that we use, so it's pretty anemic here, but it does have access to a handful of projects. And these could be personal projects that you're working on as maybe a data scientist or something along those lines, or this could be more of a collaborative project space where you're working as a team to build out an application. Next, you have this kind of exploration section. This is going to point you to documentation. It's going to show you some of the latest models, and we will look at the model catalog here in a second. And it's also going to advertise some of the features and functionality. So one of the newer features here is the video playground. So you can work with generative AI models that are used for generating video content. And there's different playgrounds, and we'll look at those here in a moment as well. And we'll also explain kind of what the playground is in a sense. Then we have some examples for code templates, and then we can explore some of the services. And actually, let's look at a few of these. So if I go to services, this is going to show a number of these different types of services that are available. So again, we're looking at some of the playgrounds. This is one for testing out speech. This is content understanding. We'll look at this in a moment because this is a new preview feature that is interesting. Both of these kind of work together. But you also have all of these other kind of AI solutions like vision and document, AI, you have language and translator type services. You have some of these new features like extract PII. So this is again meant to be a hub to help you kind of discover what services are available in this environment because this is very rapidly moving. You're getting new features and services pretty quickly. Similarly, if I go into this tutorials and templates section, this is going to link to a number of GitHub projects that you can use to help you learn how to do this, all based around different concepts. So you want to learn around multi-agent workflow automation, go ahead and start, with this GitHub project and you can build your own kind of example. And you can use this as a template to kickstart a new project, or you can use this as more of a learning experience so you can understand how it works. Next, let's look quickly at the model catalog. So there are a lot of models available. As I said, there's thousands of models available, and it is covers the whole gambit. And as a result of that, they are organized into different types of collections. You can look at industry type of models. You can look at how they're licensed. There's a lot of different features and functionality that you can kind of slice and dice this list on. And you can see that you have some of the latest models like Grok Code Fast is a very new code completion type of model. You have all the GPT models. So if we click into one of these, it's going to give you information around what kind of features are here. It's also going to tell you about things like the cost. These are estimated costs. If you really want to dive into pricing, it'll take you to the pricing workbook, but it gives you information around all of this type of thing for the model. And it also has some benchmarks from a quality perspective. And you can look at that here in this benchmarks tab too. So you can see how it compares to other models. So you can see, for instance, that this GPT-5 Nano model is not quite as good as the O3 Mini. But then if we look at the estimated cost, you can see it is a fraction of the cost of the O3 Mini. So it may be one of those type of things where this boost in quality is not worth the cost. Or maybe it is. Maybe there's something special about the O3 model that you need for your scenario. And so it's worth going after the extra cost. But you can kind of see how this compares. And you have the ability to compare it with more models, not just the built-in ones here that it's doing. It's doing this based on popularity and a few of those type of things. But all of this are kind of features that you can look at. You can look at kind of how the licensing works, click through and view the detailed. And then should you want to use this model, you really just need to click this and it'll create a new project for the model. You have ability to pick where it's going to go region-wise, what resource groups, what subscription in Azure, and so forth. And it'll build it out as a project. You also can see that there's model kind of leaderboards here based on everything from the quality to the safety to throughput. If you're looking for something that's very, very fast, there's a lot of different features here that can help you kind of select and compare your models and help you find what you are looking for. Before we jump into the actual resources up here, I do want to point out a few other things in this interface. First, there is a built-in chatbot here where you can ask it questions around Foundry to help guide you. It's mostly around documentation and asking questions about features. But for instance, I can ask where I can get the SDK and how to kind of use it to build a model, and it's going to return some information for me. So you do have the ability to chat with the Foundry environment to learn more information, and it'll link you to things. There is also a built-in documentation, so it can walk you through how to explore the different models and so on, and you can understand like the different versioning. I mean, it goes through all of this, including all the services and so forth. So it has pretty comprehensive documentation here built right in as well. And I'm not going to really go over these other ones, but this is where you'll get announcements of new preview features and you can kind of toggle them on and off. There's some settings. You can also provide feedback, and then this is for your user. But this is the base. This is the overview page. So we haven't really gone into any of the features and functionality yet. And that is all hidden within these projects. So a couple notes is AI Foundry has gone through multiple iterations since its initial release. Originally, this was all under Azure OpenAI, and it was purely focused on the OpenAI models that were part of the partnership between Microsoft and OpenAI. That later evolved into what Microsoft called their AI Hub, and there is still support for those legacy hubs. This is an example of a legacy project that's under Hub. That then later evolved into what was called Azure AI Studio. That was renamed one more time into Azure AI Foundry to help kind of differentiate it between Copilot Studio and what was happening in the Azure side. This, according to Microsoft, is kind of the last rebranding of this, but Foundry is the latest, greatest version and has most of the functionality in it compared to these older kind of solutions. So let's click through to a project. So first, when you're inside of our project, you're going to have an overview page. This is going to have the information about how to connect to the different features. If you're managing the endpoint for Foundry, this is it. This is the OpenAI endpoint. This is for other various services like the speech to text service or text to speech service and so on. And so there's a lot of just kind of overview links in here. There's information about the project, where it's located, resource groups, so on and so forth. You also have some quick links to go to places like the management center where you can add users and so on. And it has some similar kind of getting started type of content here, like you saw on the base overview page. We also do have access to our same model catalog. The little bit of a difference here is if I am grabbing one of these models, I am now deploying it inside of this project. It's not necessarily creating a new project for me like it was at kind of the base Foundry level. I have access to my playgrounds. So the playgrounds are essentially areas that are kind of low impact. I don't necessarily have to set up new workspaces to try out different models. So I can, say, for example, go into a chat playground here, and I can take the models that we've deployed in this environment and I can, you know, play with it. Say, hello to the audience. And it's a place where you can kind of test the latency of these models. You can add custom instructions here. You can also attach it to some of your data sources. So I can select existing data sources that I may have that are supported here. So like I could upload files, I could connect it to web, can use AI search, so on, to start grounding it, and I can test my models out before I actually turn this into some sort of agent or some sort of solution. And there are different playgrounds for different purposes. So that's the chat playground. But if I wanted to use image generation, or I wanted to work with speech and so forth, or I wanted to do different language translations, there are different playgrounds that are set up for these different types of scenarios. And furthermore, when we get into this agent section, I do have the ability to, as I'm building an agent, to kick it into one of these playgrounds, and then I can test my agent as well as I'm starting to develop out its capabilities. And that is where we're going next, is into agents. So again, you can have many agents developed inside of a project. I have a very simple agent here. And if I click through, it just gives me like an ID and what deployment it is associated with. I can give it instructions, prompt instructions. So here is though where I can start to customize what this agent has access to. So I can go into knowledge, for example, say I wanted to enable this particular agent to be able to search the web. I can add then a Bing search to this, and I can create a connection to the Bing search service and so forth. You'll see that there are some third parties in here, like if I want analyst research and so forth around businesses, I can bring in this Morningstar. This does require a license with them and so forth, but there's a lot of different ability to bring this. And this list is going to continue to grow over time as other third parties and stuff get integrated into it. But from the simplest perspective, I can just upload a file here. Um, and use that as the content backing for this particular agent. You have a lot of different options here to integrate knowledge. Then we also have options to integrate actions. Again, one of the more common ones that you're going to see is doing this through Azure Functions. And there's a whole bunch of document samples if we go out to that to see how that is done. But this is allows this agent to now interface with external APIs and code to be able to do certain actions. And you can also connect agents together here. So I can go here and I can pick other agents that I want this to be able to talk to through an A2A type of agent to agent scenario where if this agent is prompted with something that it doesn't necessarily know how to handle, it can pass it on to another agent that does. And you have some, again, ability to adjust some of the model settings and stuff from the agent perspective, where we will go into more detail around how you tune and do that sort of stuff in future webinars. But for now, this is just a quick understanding of what is available here. Moving on quick. All of those same templates that we talked about earlier are also available in here for you to go and kind of preemptively build out some of this. Another thing I guess I would point out is this agent can be procedurally generated as well. We can create this with code and deploy it to our project with code. You don't have to do this stuff in this UI. There is kind of that code first developer experience for all of this. And that is what you'll find inside of a lot of these templates. And if we jump back out here to kind of our overview, that is where things like these API keys and stuff will come in. Or If I go into the model catalog here and we'll just click through on one of these, you'll notice that it has this model ID. This is also how you would reference one of these models if you're doing a deployment and I want to use this Grok Code Fast 1. This is the kind of the Azure ML URL for this to be able to reference that model and bring it into my deployment. So when you're inside of these templates, you'll see places in there that you need to parameterize or set this up. And that's the type of information that you would need to do from your project area to do that. Moving on, fine tuning. This allows you to come in and adjust certain aspects of a model. Not all models support fine tuning, but there's quite a few that do. I mean, here are some of the basic GPT models that do in this environment, and it does matter in your environment. And when I say environment, I really mean Azure region. Some regions support more model fine-tuning than others. It is documented in the documentation, but it isn't necessarily always clear when you're first starting that up. So you do have to kind of read ahead and understand what is available. But I can come in here and you can look here and see that I can start tuning one of these models. And it allows me to adjust different parameters for the model and even add additional training data and so forth for depending on what the model is to help tune this. And there's some costing structures in here for the training and so on that you can kind of go through. But this is a more advanced feature if you are trying to get every ounce of performance out of a model. Content understanding, this is a preview feature. It's a relatively new feature, but it's a pretty cool feature as well. Is there's different templates and you can also build your own, but it allows you to take a document structure or some sort of content structure that you have and be able to pull out information from it. So some of these examples, like this insurance claims review, it's taking auto repair estimates in this case, and it's pulling data. You can see kind of the information it's pulling, car brand, color, all of these things, VIN, and it pulls the information out of these documents. Here's like an invoice example that it's able to read like a scanned invoice and extract this data out of it. And there's a whole bunch of these different examples. And like I said, you can kind of customize it and make it your own. But this is a new feature for being able to help with understanding the content that is in your grounded data to make it a little easier for the AI to do repeatable extractions from these documents. Moving on, tracing. This is also a relatively new preview feature, but this allows us to get into really detailed examples of where all of the timing and so forth is within our applications that we're delivering here. It does use application insights. It piggybacks off of it, but it'll give you information like, for example, that, it took 1.1 seconds to hit this GPT model, and you can kind of see where it's taking all the time and all the telemetry around the tracing of your app. And again, there's documentation here, there's some tutorials, but this is a relatively new feature that helps you with the tracing side of it. And then similarly, you have just generic monitoring. This is looking at everything from token cost to general latency. This latency is kind of an overall latency. It's not that individual parts of your application like the tracing is. And we're jumping ahead here because we're almost to time. And I want to cover a couple more things. So we have evaluations. This is your ability to monitor the risk and kind of safety. You similarly have these guardrails. This is where you can put in what are your custom content filters. You can block certain types of requests. And then you can also set up alerts around this if things are happening around that. And then finally, for our kind of protection, we can tie this into solutions like Purview to help with our data governance and so forth. Most of these other things down here at the bottom are just specific to our application. If we had data and indexes brought in, like our data sets or indexes or vector stores, this is where they would show up. This is where we can add them and monitor them, our endpoints and so forth. But as a whole, that is a kind of a 50,000 foot view of what AI Foundry is. And again, our plan is to dive into a lot of these sections in more detail and show some examples of how to use it kind of in the future.
So keys to success, really kind of putting all of this together and leaving with, the main points as to what to focus on here. So um, as Pierre said, defining that clear AI strategy and those use cases that are aligned with your business goals is crucial. Um, you saw examples of how you can set up a scalable environment, which is very important, and also managing the identity and access controls with Intra um, and RBAC. So another one we like to point out for sure is that you're integrating the governance from day one, that you are applying those AI principles, responsible principles, and in regards to optimizing the model deployment and monitoring, really understanding the landscape of the available models. I know Pierre talked a little bit about this, but um, that's going to be really crucial. And then also being able to differentiate between the Azure sold and community models, and then when you might want to create your own model. So um,
So, sorry, I was on mute, so I didn't hop in. Yes, but um, just to be transparent, the cost side of this is, in my opinion, one of the weakest areas for Foundry. It isn't always very transparent to understand how this is going to add up. It gives you very clear pricing in terms of what it costs per million tokens or something along those lines, but it's not always very clear what a prompt will translate into in terms of tokens. This is not unique to Microsoft. This is, in fact, a struggle that all of these platforms have, but it takes some work to understand kind of the costing here. And the way that you control this primarily is through quotas, where you can limit and kind of pull back how fast you can do the spend on some of these things. But it isn't always intuitive to understand how that works and also how it impacts necessarily performance. You will also notice that some of these models, especially some of the larger models, are going to be much, much slower than others. It may take several seconds for it to return an answer, maybe even minutes in some cases if it's a thinking model. And you need to be able to balance that in these scenarios. And you can abstract some of that out. You'll actually see that in more advanced control systems where they will have multiple models there. And depending on the prompt, it will either direct it to a thinking model where you need more detail, or it'll direct it to a fast model where you just need a quick answer.
all right, I know we're over time. Does anyone have any burning questions they would like to ask right now? Otherwise, you can always reach out to us. Someone will be in touch with you from our team. And so one way or another, we'll get your questions asked. But okay, I see a hand. Let's see, Todd.
Hi, quick question. Are we able to use Azure Foundry but run locally using the LLM?
Yeah, yes, that's the short answer. The longer answer is that is a brand new preview feature, and there's limitations and a lot of limitations right now. It limits one, the type of models you can do, and you also have kind of two levels of this. One, you can deploy it in your own compute in Azure, and then you have some control over you're paying for the compute side, not necessarily the number of tokens. But there's also a new feature that they are calling Foundry Local that brings it to the edge and it'll actually run locally within your network. And that then you're bringing the hardware, you're bringing all of that. But it's extremely new feature. It's not very mature, but that is where it is going long term.
Michael, did you have a question?
Sorry, that was a misclick.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, as I said, please reach out with any questions. We want to make sure that you have all your questions answered based on the content we shared today. Um, some next steps. We mentioned the next session. So for those of you who are interested, we will be in touch regarding the date for that. I wanted to also let everyone know that we do offer some lunch and learns. And so if you are interested in more of a one-on-one environment with your team, we can absolutely offer or provide that more specific AI lunch and learn on this topic. Another offering that we have is that data foundation jumpstart. So, Pierre mentioned several times throughout our session today that establishing that data foundation is crucial for success when it comes to your AI investments. Yeah, so let us know if you're interested in either one of those things. We will be in touch. Um, Pierre, anything you'd add as a closing statement?
No, not really. And again, the data foundation is certainly important, but I'd say we also do offer some just general assessments around AI readiness. We also have some more management consulting style sessions too that just help you pick the right use cases for your pilots and so forth too. If you're having difficulty deciding on the feasibility of something you're trying to do with AI, that's another area that we can help with.
All right. Thanks, Pierre. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Hopefully, you found this session to be highly informative and enjoyable. And so, if you have any questions, please reach out. Please visit our website. We have a contact us section there. But everybody should look for a message from somebody on our team following up with you as well. So, thank you, everybody. And hopefully, we'll see you all in our session too.